Hi there, I'm Tom Lee. I'm the CIO of Fundstrat Capital and the Chief Portfolio Manager for Fundstrat's family of ETFs, Granny Shots. This is our update for the week of January 20th. First, let me give you some particulars. For GRNY, the flagship, total assets are $4.33 billion with a price of $25.87. For GRNJ or SMID Cap Granny, the latest price was $28.81 and total assets of $312 million. And for GRNI or the income-oriented Granny, the latest price was $20.90 and total assets of $55 million. Let's first start with the performance over the past week. Over the past week, GRNY gained 1.25% compared to a decline of 0.36% for the S&P 500, or 160 basis points of relative outperformance. GRNJ gained 4.42% over the past week compared to 1.58% for the Russell 2500, which is 283 basis points of relative outperformance. And GRNI generated a total gain of 1% compared to a 0.3% loss for the S&P 500, or 135 basis points of outperformance. And let's look at year-to-date. Year-to-date, GRNI is up 4.47% compared to 1.44 for the S&P 500, or relative outperformance of 300 basis points. GRNJ is up 12.66% compared to 7% for the Russell 2500, or 553 basis points of relative performance. And for GRNI, it's 3.35% gain year-to-date compared to a 1.44% gain for the S&P 500, or 200 basis points of relative performance. And just to give you an update on monthly flows for the month of January so far, and we're 3 weeks in, Granny funds have accumulated $364 million of assets, which is a solid start and looks like would be the best month since October. Okay, well, let's talk about macro, and I want to talk about two things: Japanese bonds and Greenland. Over the past few days, two things happened, but I think the thing gaining the bigger headlines is Greenland. President Trump announced that he wants to take Greenland, and in order to secure the cooperation of Europe, he's beginning a series of tariffs. Beginning on February 1, a 10% tariff on any goods, and then on June 1st, this jumps to 25%. Now, he's pretty serious. You can see on Truth Social, he posted this showing Greenland and Canada as part of the U.S., and of course, he continues to say he's had conversations with members of NATO. And you might wonder, why does the White House want Greenland? Well, I think there's 5 reasons, and actually they all offer relatively sound rationale. Doesn't mean that the approach is correct, but the first is a defense argument. Greenland is the place to build the Golden Dome. If China or Russia attacks the U.S. with missiles, the apex, which is when the missiles go the slowest, is right over Greenland. The second is offensive. If the U.S. wanted to attack Russia, it shortens the distance. This is a map from the Wall Street Journal, and you can see Greenland is at the halfway point. So it is much faster for the U.S. to put ICBMs there to attack Russia and China. Third is Russia's already been militarizing Greenland with ports. Number 4, there's a commercial route, a commercial consideration. China has already built an Arctic route that cuts in half the time it takes to take goods from China to Europe. It's from 40 days to 18 days. Now, keep in mind, 18 days is about the same as actually a train, so it is a drastic reduction in time from China to Europe. And lastly, Greenland has rare earth minerals. In fact, their reserves are number 8 in the world, only behind the United States. So you can see the rationale. But in some ways, I think that this is not what's really causing markets to be weak. I think the bigger story in the past few days has been the surge, the absolute surge in Japanese yields. You can see this is Over the last 15 years, we made a 15-year high in yields. In fact, it's a 25-year high. And Treasury Secretary Bessent pointed out that this is a 6 standard deviation move. And the Bank of Japan is the largest holder of their own bonds. And Treasury Secretary Bessent pointed out he had a conversation with the Bank of Japan, and he's hoping that they'll take measures to calm things down. The Wall Street is betting that this is yield curve control that's coming. Now, should we be worried? Well, I think we should be watching what the bond VIX, which is called the MOVE Index, and the equity VIX are doing. The equity VIX surged to 20, and the bond VIX barely moved. Keep in mind, when we had that 7% decline in October, the equity VIX jumped to 30, and the bond VIX moved to 35. And in April of 2025, when we had the tariff related headlines and the subsequent 20% decline, the MOVE Index moved to 95 compared to 19 where it is, and the VIX was more than 60. So I think for the most part, the markets are taking this in stride. That's a half full argument. The half empty argument is that things could get a lot worse. And let's look at GRNY stock specific performance. Over the past week, top 5 performers in GRNY were AMD, KLA Core, Quanta, MicroStrategy, and GE Vernova. And the bottom 5 are Microsoft, SoFi, Meta, which is the Mag 7, JP Morgan, and Robinhood Markets. Now in GRNJ, the top 5 performers were Galaxy Digital, Riot Platforms, Roblox, IS Holdings, and Sanmina. The bottom 5 are Lumentum, Twilio, Pegasus, Newmarket, and UiPath. So, and then in terms of themes, the top performing theme was seasonality. Style Tilt did pretty well too, but it's also energy and cybersecurity. That makes a lot of sense given everything that's happening now. So that's it for now. Thanks for listening, and I'll speak to you soon.